Hi guys, Andy N, Spoken Label, back in the house on Sunday afternoon, and I'm knackered. Usually Sunday's my day for rest, but we've had issues with Amanda's laptop this morning because I was up to 1:30 this morning doing my own video editing, and she wakes me up 7:30, laptop's collapsed, so I've had about 3 hours sleep, so I'm dead on my feet. But always got energy, particularly when we've got a lovely poet with us today. Now, this poet I've been talking to for a couple of months now, and I've got a feeling when I started talking to Jay, it was over Jay's poetry night, which we'll come on to later on. But we've got the wonderful Jay Rosanna with us today. Now, Jay, I'm going to read that look of her bio just so you can see how much research I've done already. Jay Rosanna is a poet, writer, storyteller, and performance artist. Born and raised in the Black Country, Midlands. And we'll start from there. So, okay, Jay, for people that don't know you, and I always say, if they don't know, I'm disappointed in them. So tell us a little bit about yourself, first of all, and what's actually your creativity.
Hello, Andy. Hello, listeners. Nice to see you. As Andy said, my name's Jay Rosanna. So I write poetry, also do spoken word performance poetry and a few other things. I mostly started writing poetry when I started my gender transition, which was just before lockdown. Yeah, so that was through a series of workshops in Worcester. So I'm a Worcester-based poet now. Although I do get out and about to various different places there, Andy. So that's a short brief on me.
Yeah, obviously, before you went into the gender transition, had you done any much writing before that then, had you really? Or did
Yes.
this then lead into the writing really from there, did it?
Yeah, so in the distant past, I used to be a tech blogger, and
Oh yeah.
I also used to develop mobile apps. I had a business for 5 years running mobile app, designing and developing mobile apps for education.
Ah, right, yeah. I'm always a believer, obviously, like, because your past is your past anyway. But when you're doing something creative, it
Yeah.
makes when you're doing something else, doing a second thing creative, it makes it easier in some ways. Did you
Yeah,
find that when you first started going to the workshops and led to your poetry?
I almost didn't go to the workshops
Oh,
because
did you? Oh,
no,
wow.
I went to I was living in Worcester at the time and I saw a thing for a poetry workshop. I contacted them, and it was right at the beginning, more or less, of lockdown. So, we were all looking around for something to do, weren't we, just to try and take our
Yeah,
mind
yeah.
off the apocalypse that was about to bear its weight upon us. And I was also going to start developing mobile apps again because I thought
Mm.
I'd stopped doing it for a few years, and I thought I'll do that. So I didn't go to the first workshop, and then the person contacted me. It was Holly Winter Hughes in Worcester who was running the
Mm.
workshops. And she went, "There's a few of you who expressed an interest in coming along to the poetry workshop, and you didn't come. Do you fancy coming in? Do you fancy coming along?" So I went along to the second one, and to be honest, I didn't do poetry. I was one of those people who
Mm.
say I don't do poetry, and we started writing some things, and I just started writing, and as soon as they gave me a writing prompt, I just couldn't stop. So there you
Oh
go. Now I
wow.
do
Oh
do
wow.
poetry.
Wow, now you do poetry, definitely. Yeah. It's my case was I started out when I was very, very young, so I'm 50 now, and in fact when I was 10, so I've always been there part of my life. But I've heard a lot of cases of people like yourself round about the lockdown period where it seemed like it's opened up a trigger in your brain, really, didn't it? And now you
Yeah.
can't stop almost.
Yeah, I mean, I'd written a few pieces in the past, and I'd written a bit, but nothing like I had now. And I was so close to going back to mobile app development because I used to like designing the graphics and doing the storytelling and doing all that sort of thing. So I just found it very easy to move sideways and do the poetry. But if I sit and try and write poetry in front of a blank word processor, I just can't do it. So I often need like a writing prompt, or I need to be motivated by something in order to do the poetry.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, it's a good point that actually. Like I've ran and been to a lot of workshops over the years, and it's a great way. It's a great way, like it opens a trigger up in your brain. And the other one I tend to be a lot is because I can't drive because of my eyesight. I go and put used to certain jobs I used to work. I used to go on buses all the time, and like I've been sat on the bus watching people, and before you know it, you're scribbling ideas down. It's like a prompt, isn't it? Really. So yeah,
Yeah.
I get you completely. That's fantastic. Now, obviously, we're here today to talk about your debut book, really, Whispers in the Wind. Now, I know this book's been, you said it yourself elsewhere, I've seen it, it's a lifetime in the making, really, wasn't it? So when did you decide you needed to bring a book out?
So bringing the book out was this year, and it wasn't me that came up with the idea to bring the book out. There was a few people around Worcester who have been sort of really strong advocates for bringing the book out. So I'd say there's probably three people plus one who are probably responsible. One of them was for convincing me to bring the book out, because I'd had this collection of writings about my life, about things that had happened in my life that led up to what happened in 2019, 2020, and then there was a person who said, that they'll help me get it out, and then somebody else helped design the cover, and so they come together, and then suddenly there's a book, and it just happened. So yeah.
Oh, brilliant, brilliant. I think that's the best way always at the time you're doing right. Like things come naturally, don't they? So, and
Yeah.
I'm guessing since then he's led you into quite a few other projects, which I want to talk about in a few moments anyway.
Yeah,
Like I think it's been like that for me when I was an artist, where poetry led me in about 6 other rabbit holes, and I can see 3 other rabbit holes you've gone down since then as well. So it's brilliant. Now, I don't want to go into tons of detail on the poems, of course, but there's some fantastic poetry on this one. Okay, now when you were obviously you got into your poetry, was there any sort of writers that really led the way for you then? Was it, or did it all just come from the heart and naturally for you?
So I'm quite vocal, saying so. I'm very, very inspired by the classics. So I'm a big fan of Dylan Thomas.
Oh God, I saw that. Yeah, I saw that in the book actually.
Yeah,
I was wondering if you're
yeah.
into Dylan Thomas. Yeah, that's
W.H.
amazing.
Auden, another one.
Yeah,
So I also like a lot of the contemporary poets. Jemima Hughes, Casey Bailey,
great
those
choices.
people. So yeah, so it's just a fusing. But I hadn't read a lot of poetry. I've read an awful lot since I've started writing poetry. But it was but Dylan Thomas is like the strongest inspiration I have in not only writing poetry, but also performing poetry as well. I just
Oh
love
yeah,
the way
yeah.
it comes across.
Yeah, no, you definitely see. People want to read book, like I said, you can definitely see it with some of the books. So now I want to ask you about, obviously I don't want to go into tons of detail on your poetry because I think it's a lot of it's very, very personal stuff here. So it's for you to your story really. But I
Yeah.
particularly love the poem, and I'm going to get my Japanese or Chinese shite here in this. Nature's Kandinsky, is it? Which I know is about touching on pottery and stuff, isn't it? From Japan and stuff. What made you come up with that poem then?
Nature's Kintsugi.
Yeah, see, yeah, see, shit for brains and pronunciations again.
Yes, so nature's kintsugi. I think it's the idea, and I've took a few liberal infers about it, but it's mostly about making broken things beautiful again.
Yeah, I got that. That's what I got on that. Yeah, it's an interesting choice of words that was there. I mean, I thought, that's interesting. So yeah, but it's like, yeah, a lot of it is your book is a healing process, isn't it? Really, when like you're talking a lot about and you do to grow your stuff yourself. I mean, like I love Ditto and I love Deluge as well, for example. I mean, 2 other fantastic pieces in this book.
Oh, thank you. That's really kind. Yeah. So basically, I mean, your listeners won't know, but I had a mental break last year, early on in the year, and really it was an awful lot of different things, stress factors that came together. And then I was diagnosed with non-epileptic attack disorder, which means that I started to experience blackouts and memory loss.
Oh, I didn't know about that. Oh, yeah, I know someone else has gone through that. God, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there was a time where it first started in February, and basically I blacked out for 3 days. And when I woke up again, I woke up. I'd had my blackout in my bedroom, and I woke up in my bedroom, and I thought it was the same day. I thought I just had a quick nap, and I thought honestly, I thought everybody was like teasing me, because I've got a family that we play around and we have fun. And really, my daughter just freaked out. And from that point on, I then started having them more frequently. And by the end, I was having 3 blackouts a day and 15 hours memory loss. So I didn't even know what day it was.
Oh my good grief.
Yeah, so I use the poetry as a way of grounding, to be able to just put things down on paper, just to put thoughts down, and just to try and keep me in the present moment. So that's what I used it for, and that's really how the book that's how really the book emerged. So the 5 volumes of the book are the 5 stages of mental health recovery, really.
Yeah.
You know, accepting there's a problem, facing the fact that you've got to do something about it, all the way to sort of living with the condition, you know, from that point onwards.
Yeah, no, it does. I know people have wrote music about this really over times, and yeah, and is that sort of thing where dealing with your health like that is, and you've done it very, very, very well in this book as well, where it's like you're showing the situation on it, and then you have to deal with it, yeah, over 5 stages, and that's tremendous. Absolutely one of the best books I've read, debut books I've read for a while. This, so, but people would get to know you obviously since this book, or the run up to this book. You're now involved in other projects as well, aren't you? So, was all this planned in? Was it just come naturally to you, really?
Well, I've done a few things. I think the thing I've always liked to do, or the thing that really drives me, is I found that poetry helped me. Like it really helped me, and I'm thinking that like if a bit of poetry could, and I went from the point of view of I don't do poetry, love, you know, and all that sort of stuff, to actually find it a way of being able to express things that are really hard to say or really hard to write down. And so if I can find ways to help other people or to lift other people who are doing that, I want to do that. Plus, as you know, Andy, it's really hard to get your work out there. So,
bloody difficult. Bloody
yeah,
difficult because I think you'd agree with this one, Jay, straight away. There's a lot more poets out there and actual poetry readers sometimes, isn't there, really? So,
yeah. So, I mean, you know, one of the first things you do after you've written poetry is you go and share it with people. You might do some spoken word events, and then everyone, because the poetry circle is so loving and supporting, everyone tells you how amazing it is. And then you send it out to publishers, and then they tell you how terrible, not how terrible it is, but you suddenly realize how big the competition is to try and get words out there. And it's also, for me, I found it quite complex in the fact that I wanted my poetry presented in certain ways. I didn't just want to have a book of poem, which is fine, I think, for the most part. Which is sort of led me to say, are there ways that we can help poets get their poems out in better ways or faster ways, in the way that the poet wants them out? So those are the kind of projects that I get excited about, and I'm spending a lot more time working on. I'm actually spending a lot more time on them nowadays than actually writing the poetry. So,
but yeah, I'm in the same boat because like it was like you think like I know what I want to talk about. Is talk about his next 10 minutes. Is podcasting because like you've got your own podcast going now called the Poetic Podcast, and you were telling me just before we came on air like you've been busy with that, like I have. And
yeah.
do you find when you're doing stuff like this because it's a branch off from your poetry, it takes over your life sometimes, doesn't it? Really, without realizing.
It does, and it does it for me. It does it in a really good way because I my poetry podcast is about me going out. Excuse me. It's about me going out. So the idea was to sit in a coffee shop with a poet that I've heard that inspires me, that I really respect their work, and just learn about their process and learn about their challenges and learn about what motivates them. And it's like it's like free tutorials, if you like. It's just that's the way I've looked at
No,
it.
it's brilliant. It's a great way of doing it. That definitely. It's
And
certainly pre-lockdown. I was like that a lot myself when I used to meet people in like cafes all over central Manchester and sometimes all over the northwest. And since lockdown's kicked in, I've gone into Zoom. It's made me more lazy. No, I agree.
so
Like,
yeah, so we're working on season 2 of the podcast, which is
oh,
going to be coming out in March. And so we're already working on that, and we've got some really big names lined up for the podcast.
good luck.
Try and
Good,
fill out the podcast out with book reviews as well. So yeah.
good luck for definitely that. So, but okay, tell us the history of the podcast and what made you want to do a podcast then? That's probably we need to probably cover that then for yourself next.
Okay, so I'd started writing the poetry. I'd started going out to some spoken word events. I was I'd been cleared medically to be able from my medical condition, so I was able to go out a bit more, drive a bit more. I moved to Worcester on my own because I work far away from home, so I live there during the week mostly. And really, I wanted to connect with the local poetry community in the first instance. And also, I'd been out to some events and I'd seen some people whose paths I wouldn't otherwise cross with. And so I thought, why don't, because I'd done podcasts before when I used to be a tech blogger before I transitioned. And I thought, why don't I start a podcast where I've got a legitimate excuse to go and meet people in a slightly different context than at a spoken word event or at a written event. And we can just chill, have a cake. I love cake, Andy. Have a
I'd be
coffee.
disappointed if you didn't like cake, because all I'm going to say, you ladies, right?
I do love my lemon drizzle. And so the idea was to just go out to a coffee shop in the local area where the poet is from, and just talk about, poetry, their poetry, what drives them, a bit like what we're doing now.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
yeah.
Oh, brilliant. No, it's great. So, same thing happened to me. I'll tell you before. Mine started up on the pub, really, and it's kind of ran its own course, 6 years later, and it does it. You find something, you're doing a sort of podcast, and you know the same yourself, is you get talking to people. You may not have met them before even, and you become friends. I find that myself all the time.
Yeah, you meet some absolutely lovely people. And so what I'm hoping to do with season 2 as well is to branch out and meet people who other people haven't heard of. So I do a regular open mic. And so we've had quite a few people come and perform there for the first time,
Yeah,
which is just brilliant.
it is when you get people to do that. So I do my own. I can run my own night as well. And we're like that, and you're getting people coming along for the first time ever,
Yeah.
and it gives you that sort of buzz, doesn't it? Really, you're thinking, no matter what they do next, you've something to be proud of, it. You've encouraged somebody.
Yeah, I think so. So we've got we've done the online launch for my book, and we've got the in-person launch next Thursday. But what I've
Oh,
said for the in-person launch, I want the first half just to be an open mic, so that people can just call. Because like if we have a little bit of success, it's really hard in the poetry world to have a little bit of success and celebrate it. So I'm like, if we get a little bit of success, let's share that about and try and get some other people who probably haven't been heard so much, and try and get them heard as well. So I was adamant. I was just like, no, we're going to give up the whole first half to open micers and just share more poetry and get their words out there.
really? No, great, great. That's the best. I think it's you doing that sort of approach like that. And it's great because good luck to you. Obviously, it's too far for me to be there because I'm in about 200 miles away from you. But yeah, no, it's respect that straight away. If you're doing that, you're showing to everybody else like it's not all about me. You want other people to be up there and give. No, it's great. Well, good luck with that, definitely. So with that, so yeah. Now, obviously, we better talk on next things. Obviously, we've obviously talked about it in a direct way. Is your night on Zoom, hadn't we? Oh, so obviously, it's Worlds Collide online. Now, I first met you through that because I came across you on one of these online groups mentioned. I signed up for it. I loved it. Absolutely loved it. So tell us about what made you want to do your own online open mic then.
Yeah, so I had the idea about the same time as doing the podcast, and I've been doing, as you have, I'm sure, we've done loads of open mic nights, loads of spoken word nights, and during lockdown especially, there was a lot on Zoom, and they're still carrying on through Zoom. I do like the in-person ones, but the online ones, I found a lot of, and there's an awful lot to go to. But the thing I found for me was they were too long. And I was and by the time it often got to like for me to perform, I'd been listening to some really heartfelt poetry for about 2 hours. And sometimes I find it hard to just jump in and say, okay, well, here's my bit of poetry. You can be deeply affected by the things that you've heard.
Oh, true.
And I think 5.5 hours was the longest spoken word I went to. And the idea
I'm
was
not asking whose night that was.
it was actually a really good night, but it's the sort of night you wouldn't do very often. And
God.
and I also went to a couple of events as a first timer and had to wait right till the end to perform. So you'd heard everybody who was amazing. And by the time you end, you're so nervous, you're thinking, oh, Lord above, what's going on? And so I just thought, wouldn't it be great if there was like a regular open mic poetry night where people who'd probably never performed before could come in a small, safe space, and the whole thing lasts no more than an hour. So, and Andy, you've been to some. I run mine to time, like
Oh yeah, you start doing that. Everyone's wondering on here now. I'm pointing at my watch. You get to like 4 minutes, and you're saying, "Right, come on, get off." Oh, not quite, right?
But it's really nice. So, and try and encourage the first timers to go up early and to just share their stuff. And we've got a lot of regular established poets who come and support them as well. like yourself. So it's
Yeah.
really nice to have that small community where people, and I've been really like, sort of humbled. It sounds like a terrible word to use, it's overused, but I feel like really lucky that they've decided to come along and do their very first bit of spoken word poetry at our night. And I call it our night because it's not my night, it's just a night. And I wanted the whole, and Words Collide was the idea that the poetry worlds do collide. You know, you've got first timers, established performers, just come and have a go at it. Because
and you get, it's not just a case you get people in from England. I mean, I've seen people in parts of Africa I didn't even know about so before now.
Yeah, and it's really good just to check. Plus, the other aspect of it, going to the spoken word nights, which I do like doing, but I've done an awful lot, is sometimes it can be difficult to focus on some of the poetry that's being read in the right way, because I'm thinking in my brain, as I'm sure you do as well, right, my turn's coming up. What? Don't forget what you're going to say, blah, blah, blah. You've got all this. But on the Words Collide night, I can just, because I'm not performing, and I can just sit back and just really take in the poetry. And that's really, I think that's really, really good. And I'm hearing lots of different kinds of poetry in lots of different ways. So we have a number of visual poets who come on, share the screen and do their visual poetry. And it just opens your mind. You just go, wow, you know, what an amazing thing.
No, true. It's amazing to see people, because like you think when everyone first started to Zoom a couple of years ago, you didn't realize you could do that with them. Like it's like I do I don't have ambient sound music, and I've actually been able sometimes, because I can't play that live, no chance. But I've had it with vocalists come on. Man's been one of them, and they go on, and you get the vocalists to go on stage, and they'll do the piece for you. Vocal, or in this case, online. You play the music, and the vocalist reads out over the top of it, and it's brilliant. No, it does. It gives you so much options, really. Zoom does, definitely, with that. So now, third to last thing I want to ask you about today is, obviously you've got a mini poem press at the moment going as well, and you've just been showing me these before we came on mic. Now, obviously, I always tell people, obviously, you're welcome to listeners on YouTube, Instagram, wherever, on your audio. But this next bit is unfortunately going to have to be a video bit. We'll have to show people this. But show us some of your little poetry pressings you're doing, Jay, because these are fantastic. I'm really impressed with these.
These are the first four poetry books. There they are. It's called Mini Poetry Press. And so we've got Confirm Humanity there. We've got McGonagall's Eyes.
Oh, fantastic.
Which was inspired by a piece of artwork by a local poet. We've got Whitaker's Bay, which is a series, but this is the first part of the series. And then we've got Polar Bear versus Walrus, which is
I love that. That's brilliant. That one. Oh, fantastic. Yeah.
Which is a kind of humorous one for me.
Yeah.
And so the idea of going to these was, if you go to spoken word events, or you go to a lot of events, and you've done your bit, people often come up to you and go, have you got anything? Is there something I can take away? You know, have you got something with you? And often we give business card, or we might give a bookmark or something. And the other one is that often people will just show you like a big book of poetry. And what I really wanted was an ability for there to be one poem in a book, like a poetic story, if you like, that we could just sell, that we could either sell or give away. And so I've called it like Pokemon for poetry, but I have to be careful about using that. Like, you got to, but the idea is that they're colourful, and you've got to collect them all, really. And it's gonna be a really easy way where poets who have got an interesting poetic story can get their poem into print at no cost to them, and they get paid for the books that are sold as well. So it's a really easy way to get your work published in a really accessible way. And so I love doing it now. So the first four came out with my pieces of poetry. We've now signed up 3 new poets who are going to be providing in the next three books. And then Mini Poetry Press will be opening to submissions, and hopefully we'll be launching about 4 a quarter.
That's a good idea. Yeah. Also, like, can you reveal who these 3 other poets are yet, or do you want to hold back?
Not yet.
That's one.
They're poets who've not been published yet, but they're amazing poets who I'm personally now I'm friends with, and And the only reason I don't want to say it is because we're going to have a launch, and I want to make a big hoo-ha of them, and just say, look, these are amazing poets, and then surprise everybody on the day with these brilliant set of colourful poetry books.
That's fine. Yeah, keep it a surprise for me. That's fair enough. And my hard-hitting investigations and journalism questions haven't brought through there.
Yeah, you'll have to drill me a bit harder for that, Andy.
No, fair play. They are look lovely to do. Now, obviously, I want to get onto obviously tell people. Obviously, we'll touch on these. Where will people be able to get these from then when they're all released?
Okay, so the first instance would be to go to my website at jrosanna.com. So I also have a site on Ko-fi, shop on Ko-fi, where people can buy them as well. My main book is on Waterstones and Ko-fi, but for the mini poetry press books, it'll mostly be jrosanna.com and kofi.com/jrosanna, and you'll be able to get them from there.
Great. No, good luck with that. Definitely with that, Jay. Look tremendous. Now, obviously, I'm going to wrap up now. Obviously, we've done this the other way around to what I usually do it now. But obviously, what plans do you have next for next year then? Obviously, this has been recorded at the end of 2022. Anyone's wondering. Could you see yourself doing a second book or something? Second format book?
So my second book's nearly finished.
Yeah. Oh, is it? I didn't know. Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, so I was quite pleased in the fact that even though we haven't launched yet, and I can tell you we've sold 112 now with my book. Would you believe?
Oh,
I actually had a Facebook message from a new friend who they're not a new friend anymore, but they said, could you please stop boasting about how many books you've sold? I'm really proud of my book. I'm really proud. You know, loads of people worked really hard on it. And I just want to share that you'd think that everybody wanted to. So going to be doing that. I'm going to be extending Mini Poetry Press out, and Mini Poetry Press are launching an anthology early in the new year.
Oh, brilliant.
You know, the title, I can share the title with you, Andy. The title will be called Ruby, and it's going to be a hardbound small book of love, power, and passion.
Good luck.
So I'll be opening that up to people to submit to.
Oh, fantastic! I get the feeling that you've probably started the submission date time this goes live actually. So because this is going out end of January, I think. So when's that going to be starting from then? Do you know yet?
So that'll be starting in February.
That's time to perfection, isn't it? So,
so keep your eye open on jrosanna.com, which is it's my website, but I'm bringing everything together in that website, so you'll be able to get everything from there.
Good luck. Brilliant. Okay, we'll wrap up this part then, because I'm conscious of the time now. I want to give you a chance to read out a few poems for us, so hang around, everybody, because this is one tremendous poet. No two days about it. See you all in 2 shakes of the dice.